From the very heartbeat, King Charles draws his final breath. A massive, thousand-year-old political engine roars to life. But for one woman, this isn't just the conclusion of a reign, it is the violent dismantling of a 30-year social climb. When you hear the bells of Westminster Abbey tolling, don't hear them as a tribute. Hear them as a terrifying countdown. It's the exact moment Camilla Parker Bowles begins to lose every scrap of power she fought, bled, and sacrificed her reputation to secure. We've watched her transition from the other woman to the Queen Consort. But the second the crown rests on Prince William's head, that prestige will vanish like a desert mirage. Because here is the brutal reality: Buckingham Palace is desperate to hide. Camilla's status is entirely a house of cards. Her crown, it's on loan. Her palaces, she's just a tenant. Her security, it's strictly temporary. And the man who now holds the keys to her survival is the same son who watched his mother, Princess Diana, weep in the shadows while his father's mistress occupied the throne Diana was promised. William isn't just inheriting a kingdom, he's inheriting the absolute authority to strip it all away. From the priceless diamonds around her neck to the very roof over her head. Camilla is about to learn that surviving the 90s tabloids was the easy part. Surviving the reign of King William is where the true nightmare begins. We are entering the era of the Great Thinning, a surgical, legal erasure of the woman who spent decades trying to make the world forget her past. Today, we are pulling back the velvet curtain on the 15 agonizing things Camilla will lose within the first 24 hours of Charles's passing. We're exposing the secret legal traps that could leave her effectively homeless, the historic tiaras she must surrender immediately, and the one individual who decides if she remains in the royal fold or is cast into permanent, lonely exile. This isn't just royal protocol. This is a son's clinical, silent retribution. Stay with us until the very end, because our number one reveal is a secret. Diana predicted 30 years ago, and seeing it finally come true will leave you absolutely breathless. You cannot afford to miss a single second of this power shift, because the House of Windsor is about to change forever. Before we dive into these 15 shocking losses, take a moment to smash that like button if you believe the truth deserves to be told. We also want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let us know which country or city you are watching from. We love seeing our global community of royal investigators grow. The death of a title, from queen to dowager. To truly grasp the scale of Camilla's looming downfall, one must first look inside the gilded, yet fragile, cage of British royal nomenclature. Today, the world addresses her with the highest honor, Her Majesty the Queen. It carries the weight of absolute authority, doesn't it? It feels eternal, as if she has finally reached the summit of the mountain. But within the heartless, razor-sharp mechanics of British constitutional law, that title is nothing more than a short-term lease. It isn't anchored to her own merit. It is tethered solely and exclusively to the physical pulse of King Charles III. The very instant that pulse ceases, Camilla will undergo a metamorphosis that is as legally clinical as it is socially crushing. In one single, agonizing breath, she is no longer the Queen Consort. She is stripped of her status as the reigning sovereign's partner and reclassified as something far more vulnerable, the Queen Dowager. To an outsider, Queen Dowager might still sound prestigious, perhaps even regal. But inside the shark-infested corridors of Buckingham Palace, it is merely a polite, historical way of saying the widow who no longer belongs. It is a brutal corporate demotion, the royal equivalent of being downgraded from CEO to a retired consultant overnight, all while the entire world watches your fall from grace. By losing that consort suffix, Camilla loses her constitutional oxygen. She is no longer the partner of the king. She becomes a relic of a bygone reign, a footnote in a history book that King William is about to slam shut. This is the moment the crown's protection vanishes. leaving her exposed to the cold winds of a new administration that remembers everything. The Queen Mother trapdoor forever locked. Here is where the legal knife twists, and where the ghost of Princess Diana silently reclaims her territory. Historically, the widow of a king often ascends to the position of the Queen Mother. This is a role of immense, almost untouchable influence. We saw this with Queen Elizabeth's mother, who remained a titan of the British establishment. For half a century after her husband's passing, she commanded a massive private budget, a sprawling staff, and a level of public devotion that rivaled the Queen herself. But for Camilla, that door is not just closed, it is deadbolted. In the House of Windsor, the law of the bloodline is absolute and merciless. Camilla is not the biological mother of the reigning king, she is the stepmother to William. She isn't the matriarch of the family's future, she is the woman who haunted his mother's marriage and eventually stepped into her bed. Under King William's reign, the Queen Mother title and the millions of pounds in sovereign grant money that accompany it will simply cease to exist for her. There will be no grand office, no diplomatic immunity, and no seat at the head of the royal table. Instead, she will be relegated to the shadows, a mere spectator in a life she once controlled. She will be forced to watch from a distance as Catherine, the new queen, takes center stage. Catherine will claim the grace, the bloodline, and the crown that Camilla spent 30 years trying to legitimize. Rumors suggest that King Charles tried to prevent this through secret, back-channel agreements to protect her future. But here is the cold reality. William has zero intention of honoring them. In the House of Windsor, when the bloodline shifts, the outsiders are the first to be frozen out. The social erasure, from center stage to the shadows. In the rigid, unyielding hierarchy of the British monarchy, your title dictates the very ground you are allowed to stand on. For Camilla, that ground is about to shift violently. Without her status as consort, she loses what is known as the right of precedence, the invisible legal shield that once placed her at the absolute pinnacle of high society. Think about the visual impact at the next state banquet or royal wedding. The woman who for years led the procession at the king's side will be relegated to the background. She will no longer walk at the front. She will be forced to walk several paces behind King William, behind Queen Catherine, and eventually, behind her own grandchildren. The world will witness a staggering role reversal. The woman to whom everyone once bowed must now carefully calculate every step, ensuring she doesn't offend the new king or overstep her diminished boundaries. William is a ruler of spreadsheets and surgical modernization. He has already signaled his vision for a slimmed-down monarchy, a future that prioritizes his mother's legacy while leaving almost no room for a queen dowager. To William, Camilla remains a living, breathing reminder of the House of Windsor's darkest years in the 1990s. This constitutional erasure isn't just a change of protocol, it's a clinical plan to delete her authority from the national consciousness. Camilla is about to discover that her title was the only thing shielding her from the freezing winds of Windsor. Without it, she is simply a 76-year-old widow at the mercy of a stepson who has spent his entire life preparing for this exact moment of absolute control. The Great Eviction, losing the keys to the kingdom. As devastating as losing a title may be, it is only the beginning of Camilla's fall. While a rank is merely ink on parchment, the next thing on William's list is made of stone, mortar, and centuries of history. He is about to reclaim the keys to every residence she has ever called home. In the high-altitude world of the British monarchy, home isn't defined by memories or sentiment. It is dictated by the cold, unyielding boundaries of the Crown Estate and the Duchy of Cornwall. For over 20 years, Camilla has glided through the gilded hallways of Clarence House and strolled through the gardens of Highgrove as if they were her own. But here is the brutal, physical reality that will strike the moment the state funeral ends. Camilla Parker Bowles does not own a single brick of these royal palaces. Not one. The second King Charles draws his last breath. The keys to the kingdom don't just symbolically pass to William, they legally and instantly transfer. For Camilla, the notice to vacate won't be delivered by a bailiff. It will be enforced by 1,000 years of grace and favor protocol. First, consider Clarence House, her primary London sanctuary since 2003. In the royal hierarchy, this mansion is reserved for the heir apparent. The moment William ascends, Clarence House reverts to the crown, likely to become the office for the new heir. Prince George, imagine the psychological weight. While the world is in mourning, Camilla will be privately supervising the packing of her entire life into cardboard boxes. Knowing the new administration is already measuring the windows for her replacement, then there is Highgrove House, the epicenter of the Charles-Diana-Camilla triangle. This was the place where the three of them truly lived their drama. But Highgrove is owned by the Duchy of Cornwall. When William becomes king, he automatically becomes the Duke of Cornwall, and effectively, Camilla's landlord. William's relationship with Highgrove is deeply scarred by the memories of his mother's unhappiness there. Insiders suggest he has zero interest in maintaining it as a private retreat for his stepmother. He sees it as a business asset or a potential memorial space. For Camilla, being asked to leave Highgrove isn't just a change of address, it's the loss of her most sacred territory. She goes from being the mistress of the manor to a guest who has overstayed her welcome, the staff purge, cutting the lifeline. The eviction from royal palaces is visible to the eye. But there is a much quieter, more devastating erasure happening behind closed doors. In the elite corridors of British power, it is being whispered as the Great Thinning. To King William, the monarchy isn't just a tradition, it's a multi-billion-dollar corporation that has been bloated for far too long. And the very first department he plans to downsize, the one belonging to his stepmother, currently as Queen Consort, Camilla is shielded by a dedicated, small army. She has her queen's companions, a modern, streamlined version of ladies-in-waiting who manage her social diary, offer emotional support, and act as a human buffer against a sometimes hostile public. She has a private press office, senior secretaries, and a logistical team that ensures her life runs with the precision of a well-oiled machine. But every single one of those positions is tied to a specific contract, a contract with the reign of King Charles III. The second William ascends, he becomes the ultimate CEO of the firm, and his vision for a modernized monarchy has absolutely no room for a queen dowager with a massive, taxpayer-funded entourage. Imagine the morning after the transition. Camilla wakes up in a world that has suddenly gone silent. In a move that mirrors a hostile corporate takeover, William is expected to initiate a surgical strike on Camilla's household. Her private secretaries will be reassigned to serve the new queen, Catherine, or let go entirely. Her press team will be absorbed into the main Buckingham Palace pool, where their priority will be protecting the image of the new king, not defending the reputation of the widow. For a woman who hasn't had to draft her own email, manage her own schedule, or even dial a phone number for 30 years, this isn't just a budget cut, it's a total loss of autonomy. But the thinning cuts deepest at her security detail. The elite SO-14 Protection Command in the royal family. 24/7 armed police protection is a luxury reserved for working royals. The moment Camilla becomes a dowager, she technically ceases to be working. William, ever the man of spreadsheets and clinical logic, knows that providing around-the-clock protection for a stepmother without official duties costs the public millions. He remembers how his mother, Diana, was stripped of her royal security after the divorce, a move many believe led to the tragedy in Paris. Now, the roles are hauntingly reversed. William can argue that Camilla only requires security during rare public appearances, effectively leaving her private life unguarded. This is how William wins. He doesn't need to banish her to a tower, he simply removes the scaffolding that held up her power by dissolving her staff, slashing her budget, and withdrawing her elite protection. He effectively fades her out of the national consciousness. For many Diana loyalists, this is the ultimate checkmate. The mistress who took her place is finally experiencing the same cold, systemic isolation. The diamond reclamation stripping the gilded mask. In the ruthless spectacle of the British monarchy, jewelry is never merely about the sparkle. It is a cold, hard currency of legitimacy, branding, and raw power. For decades, a collective shiver has run down the spine of the public every time Camilla Parker Bowles appeared at a state banquet wearing a piece intimately associated with Princess Diana. To many, it felt like a visual conquest, a way of declaring, "I have the man, and now I have his mother's glitter." But there is a silent, golden rule within the subterranean vaults of Buckingham Palace. The crown jewels do not belong to the person, they belong to the sovereign. The second Prince William becomes king. He becomes the ultimate, undisputed gatekeeper of the world's most legendary jewelry box. Imagine the tension as the heavy, reinforced doors of the royal vault swing open. For Camilla, this isn't just a change of ownership, it's a physical stripping of her royal identity. Under Charles, she had the keys to the kingdom's most iconic tiaras to bolster her image. Under William, that access hits a brick wall. Let's talk about the lover's knot tiara. You've seen Camilla wear it, smiling under the weight of those massive swinging pearls, but to the world, and most importantly, to William, that tiara is the definitive symbol of his mother. Diana famously said the piece was so heavy it gave her agonizing headaches. Yet she wore it with a tragic grace that defined an era. The moment Charles is gone, William has the absolute authority to retire these pieces from Camilla's reach. He doesn't need a public scene, he simply updates the royal loans registry. In the first 24 hours of his reign, William can designate the lover's knot and the Greville tiara exclusively for the use of the new queen, Catherine. The symbolism is as sharp as a diamond's edge. Imagine the global headlines when Catherine steps out for her first state dinner as queen, wearing the very jewels Camilla was forced to surrender just days prior. It is a visual restoration of the rightful order. William knows that by reclaiming these diamonds, he is effectively dequeening Camilla in the eyes of the digital age. Without the borrowed glitter of historic monarchs, she is left looking ordinary. The reclamation goes even deeper into her private collection. William, a man of clinical attention to detail, will likely trigger a full audit of every piece Camilla holds. If a necklace was purchased using funds from the Duchy of Cornwall, which William now owns, he can legally argue that the asset belongs to the duchy, not the stepmother. By the time the first 24 hours of William's reign are over, Camilla's dressing table will look hauntingly empty. She will be left with only her modest, pre-marriage collection, utterly lacking the queenly aura she spent 30 years cultivating. William isn't just reclaiming stones, he is reclaiming his mother's legacy. Carat by carat, as the vault doors click shut, Camilla will realize that the revenge of Diana isn't a loud explosion, it's the quiet, cold sound of a key turning in a lock, leaving her in the shadows of a history that no longer belongs to her. The gilded exile, the final silence. While the eyes of the world are fixed on the glittering coronation of King William V and the undeniable radiance of Queen Catherine, a very different, far quieter scene will unfold away from the flashbulbs of London. Imagine a grey, silent morning at Raymill House, Camilla's private estate in Wiltshire. Once her sanctuary, her escape from the pressures of royal life, it is about to become her gilded cage. This is the stage of social exile, a psychological isolation far more piercing than the loss of any palace. In the House of Windsor, power is a spotlight the moment a king dies. That light doesn't just dim, it swings violently away. For Camilla, the sudden silence will be deafening. No more royal motorcades clearing the streets, no more private jets, no more bowing courtiers. Instead, she will be left watching the news like the rest of us. Seeing the children of the woman she once eclipsed, William and Harry lead the nation into a new era. William's strategy for his stepmother is one of clinical kindness. He won't banish her to a literal tower, he will simply stop inviting her to the inner circle. She will find her name missing from the guest lists of high-profile galas. Her patronages, those prestigious organizations she worked so hard to align with, will quietly begin to transition their loyalty to Catherine or Princess Charlotte. This is the shadow of the past finally catching up. For decades, Camilla lived behind the shield of Charles's unwavering love. But with Charles gone, that shield shatters. She is left facing a king who doesn't just remember his mother's tears, he is the living embodiment of her legacy. Every time William looks at Camilla, he doesn't see a beloved Queen Dowager. He sees the woman who made his mother's life a living hell. The social hierarchy of the British aristocracy is brutal. They follow the power, not the person. The same dukes and duchesses who once bowed to Camilla will now pivot instantly toward Queen Catherine. Camilla will become the aunt people are polite to at Christmas, but who is no longer consulted on family matters. She will be remembered as the interim queen, the woman who held the seat warm between the era of Elizabeth and the era of Catherine. As she walks through her private gardens at Ray Mill, the echoes of 1995 will return. She will remember the headlines that branded her the most hated woman in Britain. She fought for 30 years to change that narrative, to wear the crown, and to earn respect. But William's reign is a cold reminder that while the public's memory is long, a son's memory is even longer. In his kingdom, there is only one people's princess, and her name isn't Camilla. This social erasure is the final checkmate. The mistress becomes a ghost, the mother becomes an eternal icon. The lights are going out. On everyone, leaving Camilla in the shadows of a history that has finally moved on without her. 30 years ago, in a dimly lit room, Princess Diana sat before the world and uttered the words that would haunt the British monarchy forever. There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. She spoke of a shadow that eclipsed her happiness, a Rottweiler that stood between her and the throne. But as we stand at the threshold of King William's reign, that shadow doesn't just fade, it is being systematically dismantled. This is the final checkmate. As we've traced these 15 brutal losses, from the loss of majestic titles and historic homes to the silent surrender of the diamonds she once wore to claim legitimacy, one truth becomes undeniable: you can win the crown, but you cannot win the heart of a son who remembers. William's reign won't be defined by a loud, public vendetta. Instead, it will be a clinical, quiet restoration of his mother's honor. Every privilege Camilla loses is a brick returned to the monument of Diana's legacy. When King Charles passes, the era of damage control for Camilla dies with him. She will not be remembered as the legendary queen she aspired to be, but as the interim queen, the woman who waited 30 years for a crown she could only hold for a few, only to grow old in the isolated silence of Raymill House. This leads us to the ultimate realization, the number one thing Diana predicted. She famously said she didn't want to be queen of a country, she wanted to be a queen in people's hearts. As Camilla fades into the background as a forgotten Queen Dowager, Diana's influence only grows stronger through the king she raised and the Queen Catherine she inspired. This is Diana's silent final victory from beyond the grave. The mistress becomes a ghost. The mother becomes an eternal icon. But now, the most important question remains for you. Is King William right to be this clinical in stripping Camilla of her status? Or is he being too cold toward a woman who has served the crown faithfully for years? Is this protocol? Or is it karma? We want to hear your voice. Drop a comment below right now. And if you found this deep dive into the House of Windsor fascinating, Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. Thanks for watching.